Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thanks to everyone in Schaible here. Thanks to everybody on Zoom. We'll go ahead and get started. We have two speakers tonight. Last week, we heard from two senators currently in session in Juneau. And tonight, we are going to hear from Natasha von Imhof and Sarah Snowberger. So let me introduce the two of them, and then I'm going to turn it over to Natasha. After earning a BS from Harvard College and an MBA from the University of Washington, Natasha utilized her background in finance and investments by chairing the Audit and Budget Committee for a year while serving on the Anchorage School Board, 2012 to 2015, and co-chairing the Senate Finance Committee for 2 years while serving as an Alaska State Senator, 2017 to 2022. To honor her family's legacy, Natasha currently sits on the Rasmussen Foundation Board and the Atwood Foundation Board, providing grants to nonprofits who are doing the hard work serving Alaskans in need. She also serves on the Seattle Children's Hospital Board, where her daughter is a patient ambassador after being treated for a brain tumor. And lastly, Natasha serves on the Alaska Chamber Board to support business and economic development in Alaska. She writes women's fiction, and her debut book, Double Shot of Living, was published in September 2023 and can be found on Amazon. And she says that it is raked in $37 so far in royalties. So that is Natasha, and she'll be up here in just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Sarah Snowberger, and she's going to speak after Natasha. She's originally from Dillingham, Alaska. She graduated from UAF in 2017 with a degree in applied anthropology and rural development. In 2013, she participated in the legislative internship program as an intern for Senator Bill Wilichowski. After completing the program, she was hired as full-time staff for the late Senator Johnny Ellis and has since worked in both bodies of the legislature. This is Sarah's 12th legislative session in the Capitol, and she currently serves as Chief of Staff for Representative Maxine Dibert. She lives in Juneau year-round with her husband and their dog. And so with that, I will turn it over to Natasha. She will speak for 20 or so minutes, and then Sarah will speak, and then we're going to have a Q&A session that they'll field questions. So, and you are mic'd up?
So they tell me.
Okay. Thanks, Natasha.
And then I press go with this arrow right here.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Professor Boylan. So Natasha von Imhof, here in Fairbanks, it's actually a balmy day today. It's quite nice. I almost didn't even need my gloves. So one of the things when Professor Boylan reached out, he said, come talk about things that you're thinking about. Just about leadership, about things that are going on in Alaska. And it's fun because I've had some of these thoughts swirling in my mind over the last year. And this opportunity gave me the purpose to kind of put them all together kind of in a story or kind of in a concise fashion. So, and one of the things that Professor Boylan asked me is what is your background? So as he mentioned, I've served on the Rasmussen Foundation since 2005. And we have a statewide focus. We go from Ketchikan to Kotzebue and Utqiagvik down to Juneau and everything in between. We do social services and health, pick, click, give, dental health therapists, youth camps, Recovery Alaska, food banks, women's shelters. And most recently, we're talking about next level community development, like workforce development, job creation, and economic development. And then on the Alaska State Senate, I was a senator for 6 years, serving on the Senate Finance Committee and the Resources Committee with my good friend, Senator Click Bishop, who is here today. Thank you, Click. So Click and I actually served on the Senate Finance Committee and Resources Committee the whole time that I was there. So he's kind of like my BFF, so thank you. And so you learn about all the economic drivers that make Alaska run. So that's kind of where my head is. It's you making the money. How do you do the state revenue? How do you have people find jobs and reach their full potential in their lives? So one of the things that Professor Boylan asked me is also kind of like my leadership style. I'm a pragmatist, also called a realist. So I start with a vision, but then I back into actually what's possible, as in What are the laws? What are the tax laws? What are the regulations? What are the cast of characters? What are the egos involved? And then you kind of see how you actually can shoehorn potentially a solution in place. I spend a lot of time in the mountains. It's my favorite place to think. And I give myself at minimum 30 minutes a day, preferably 1 hour a day by myself to think. No distractions, no phone, no social media, not even music. And it takes me that long to process what did I hear that day? What did I read that day? What conversations? What research? What did I hear last week, last month, last year? And I put it all together. To me, this is more as important as sleep and eat. And of course, I try to combine it with exercise. And extra credit, if you set 5 minutes aside for gratitude during the day, that's what makes me, I think, an effective leader. So the scene is set. What are we going to talk about today? I always believe in telling the key takeaways right off the bat. We're going to talk about climate change, winners and losers. And I use that in tongue in cheek. It is catchy and a memorable phrase, but there are absolute losers. And this is real. Climate change is real. We're having flooding in the interior of Alaska. There's wildfires. Fish counts are down. There's less sea ice to protect communities during those winter storms. It's real and it's tough. But I'm also looking at winners, and I call those winners, and I say that it's new economic opportunities that are going to emerge over the next 10 years that did not exist 10 years ago. Also, what happens over there affects us here. That means whatever's happening in Europe, in Russia, in China, and the lower 48, oftentimes finds its way to affect us here in Alaska. And lastly, the students in this room who understand multi-discipline complexity will be invited to sit at the seat of the table. And I understand that sector specific and sector specialists are important, but the jack of all trades, and to some degree be master of them all, is who's going to be invited to the big important summits. This takes more work. You got to get up earlier. You got to stay up later. You got to set time to think. But to me, that is what is going to be the most effective leader, is to have a little bit of an understanding, actually a good sized chunk of understanding of all the different subjects. And that's what makes it difficult, but super fun. All right. So we're going to illustrate these 3 takeaway concepts by using 3 industries: mining, transportation, and communication. So let's start. Obviously, what is the big overarching event that's happening in the Arctic? Less ice. The summer Arctic sea ice is shrinking by 13% per decade, and the sea ice cover continues to be younger and thinner each year. We're not here to debate climate change. We're not to debate why it's happening or what to do about it. It's happening. It's manifesting itself in different ways and in different parts of the world. So here's actually a super interesting picture. It's an aerial photo of the diminishing sea ice compared to 1979 to 2018, 39 years apart. Robert Andrew Rohde is an American physicist. And here he shows the change in the summer sea ice over 40 years. As you can see, it's considerably smaller. So what does less ice mean? For mining, new land is opening up for mineral exploration. For transportation, shipping lanes are opening up over the Northwest Passage. For communication, we have potential to lay additional fiber optic sea cable on the sea floor during certain times of the year. So, Greenland, been in the newspaper a lot. Trump wants to buy it. So what is Greenland? It is a Danish autonomous territory with a population of just under 60,000 people, but it's 20% bigger than the state of Alaska. Why Greenland? I mean, it's way over there. Who cares? But it does affect us a lot. So Greenland has been actually on the radar for years. President Andrew Johnson in 1867 and 1868 tried to buy Greenland. Then again in 1946, Harry Truman offered Denmark 100 million in gold bullion for the territory, and neither effort was successful. And Trump is floating the idea now, and a lot of people are paying attention. Why do you think that is? This is from a CNBC article from just this past month, in January 2025. The changing environment has seen parts of Greenland's ice sheet and glaciers replaced by wetlands, areas of shrub, and barren rock. Major ice loss from Greenland is exposing the island's natural resources, inadvertently making some of the world's largest untapped critical mineral reserves more accessible. In a 2023 survey of Greenland's resource potential, they evaluated a total of 38 raw materials on the island, with the vast majority of which have a relatively high or moderate potential of excavation. And Click being a mineral or a miner here in Alaska, I think he understands that. When you have a moderate or high potential, that's a big deal. Here's from an NPR article from 2019. The craggy hills that surround Narsuk, a town of 1,200 in southern Greenland, are estimated to hold a quarter of the world's rare earth minerals. So what's the big deal about rare earth minerals? They are the key ingredients used in many of today's technologies, from smartphones to MRI machines, as well as electric cars and military jets. And they are the battery storage for wind farms and solar panels. By shining a light on Greenland, we as a society are learning more about minerals, mining, and by extension, Alaska is getting included in the conversation because we have the similar potential. So this is kind of interesting, and I tried to make it a little bit better, but this is what I could get. From a Georgetown University security review from 2023. So if you look on the left, it lists out the critical minerals in the colors in the bottom. You've got copper, lithium, nickel, manganese, cobalt, graphite, zinc, rare earths. So electric cars, which is on the top left, require approximately 6 times more mineral inputs than a gas-powered car. And then on the right side, you can see on and offshore wind power plants need nearly 9 times more than mineral resources than a natural gas plant. So these resources, these elements, these mining items are very important, especially for moving to alternative energy. So who's supplying these? China is one of the largest producers and suppliers of critical minerals in the world, controlling over 85% of the processing capacity, establishing a near monopoly on access and price. So if you look on the right-hand side, rare earths, China, lithium, China, cobalt, China, nickel, China, copper, China. On the left-hand side of extraction, rare earths, mostly China. That's mining. So now let's talk about transportation. We start with the Panama Canal, which is way over there from Alaska. The United States built the Panama Canal between 1904 to 1914, and it remains a critical artery of global trade by linking the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. It offers unmatched efficiency of trade between Asia and the American Eastern seaports. Right now, it's been in the paper too, Chinese companies operate ports at both ends of the canal, so basically bookended. And this provides China the ability to control access, timing, priority, as well as manipulate fees. And any country can do this. And I would argue the United States has probably done this at one point in the past, but China is doing it now. And I do believe, though, that US military ships just got permission to pass through without tariffs. I think that was in the last, 2 days. But this has been an issue going on for quite some time now. So to kind of review, their primary shipping routes between the East Coast of Japan and Asia is through the Panama Canal. It's about 12,000 miles. You go over the top, 10,000 miles. So the global transportation of goods is shorter between the East Coast and Asia over the top. And with the melting sea ice, it becomes more possible certain times of the year. And a shorter travel saves time and money and circumvents the Panama Canal and gives whoever owns the canal less leverage to increase tariffs, which of course just increases the cost of goods and inflation for the end consumer. So keep going. What else is happening over there? What is Nord Stream? Nord Stream is a network of offshore natural gas pipelines which run under the Baltic Sea from Russia to Germany to provide Western Europe with natural gas. So if you look at the bunch of pipes, it's the top red one that kind of arcs. That's the Nord Stream. Due to the Russia invading Ukraine in February of 22, early morning in September of 2022, a series of powerful undersea explosions destroyed both pipelines, Nord Streams 1 and Nord Streams 2. And on the right side is a picture of the severed pipeline. So here's Europe and their natural gas. And the red, well, let's just talk about natural gas. We know that Europe and Alaska and everywhere else needs natural gas for power generation, household heating, cooking, and industrial processes. So the red on the bottom, that was the Nord Stream. That's gone. The other lighter red is the Ukraine. And if you recall, they turned off that pipe December 31st of this year. That's gone. The blue, with eventual economic sanctions on Russian goods, including gas, that's going to slowly go away. So we need yellow. Yellow is expanding their natural gas potential, probably from the United States, maybe even from Alaska. What else is happening over there? In communication. In November of 2024, 2 submerged internet cables in the Baltic Sea were suddenly disrupted in an apparent sabotage operation by a Russian shadow fleet boat dragging an anchor on the floor. So one happened in November 18th between Germany and Finland. One happened on November 19th between Lithuania and Sweden. Another one occurred in December. And then another occurred in the 26th of January between Sweden and Latvia. This is a huge disruption for European countries. And they're looking for alternatives to the Baltic Sea. How does this affect Alaska? If the United States and the world want to wean ourselves off of carbon-based energy, then we need then critical minerals for battery storage. And it's funny because I rented an EV car and I'm just watching the battery as it goes. I'm like, turn down the heat, turn down the heat, turn down the heat. And, but it's funny, and I'm doing this presentation, we need those critical minerals for those electric vehicles. So if we need critical minerals, Greenland has them, Alaska has them. Melting ice is exposing opportunities in both those areas. And if we want to diversify the source of the critical minerals away from China or any single country that has a monopoly, it may be prudent to look domestically and to other allied nations. And then in transportation, the global transportation of goods is shorter between the East Coast and Asia over the Arctic Northwest Passage. And with the melting sea ice, it's becoming more possible. And the shorter distance saves time and money and avoids the Panama Canal. And with communication, thawing ice in the Arctic may open up new routes for internet cables that lie at the bottom of the ocean, although we are seeing ice scouring as an issue as well. That's another conversation. But I know that Europe wants to reroute data traffic away from the vulnerable choke points. So this is a really cool map. This is a USGS map for critical minerals potential in Alaska on the left side there. So from a Georgetown University study, it states, the United States and its allies must focus on the critical mining component of semiconductor production to counter China's growing monopoly. The preservation of a free and open market for essential ingredients in the development of technologies aimed at advancing climate change is of paramount importance. China, with its monopoly, poses a significant obstacle to this objective. As you can see, all the red is high potential, high certainty of mineral extraction. And the yellow is medium potential and medium certainty. We have a lot of red. We have a lot of opportunity and yellow. And as you can see, we've got several mines now and potentially several maybe in the works. So here's the transportation. The Canadian Defense Minister, Bill Blair, said this past July, by 2050, the Arctic Ocean could be the primary point of transit between Europe and Asia. So the red line, that's Russia. And the green line is Greenland, Canada, Alaska. So the continuous route, by keeping Greenland kind of an ally with the United States and Canada, we can protect the entire shipping lane between Scandinavia, Greenland, Canada. And then look at the choke point by Nome. Nome, well, there was a deep water port that was getting funded, and then I think it just got delayed, but I'm hoping that they work that out, because I see Nome as playing a critical role in protecting the Bering Strait, because Russia is going to be using those shipping lanes. They already are. And we need to have support and supply refurbishment, repairs and parts and labor and a big airport, as well as the military and national security. I mean, if this is, the green is happening. I don't know if the blue is going to happen, but the green is happening. And I see all through Barrow, Utqiagvik, Nome, we're going to be like front and center. And then here's communication. So there is proposed this company called Far North Digital. It's a partnership between a Finnish company and an Alaskan company, and they want to lay a 14,500 kilometer subsea fiber optic cable in the Arctic. More cables are required because of quantum computing. And the summer thaw allows ships to install the cable, while the winter freeze limits disruptions for ship dragging its anchor to sever the line. Of course, the ice scouring is its own issue as well. But there are plans actively right now to make something like this, and they're collecting money as we speak. This is the part that I find so fascinating. With 350 million people in the United States, pretty much everybody owning a phone, that's a lot of photos, a lot of text messages, that's a lot of data and content to store and protect. And with the advent of AI and quantum computing, the United States needs to build data centers, and fast. And that's why Trump is trying to solicit his Emirati billionaire Hussein Sudwani, I pronounce that, to put at least 20 billion to invest in data centers in the United States. We'll see if you can do that. When Click and I were in the Senate, we did have a couple folks present. And what we learned is data centers have to have enough land available, because you can see they're kind of long and flat. Proximity to an enormous power source. Data centers require redundant and reliable fiber connectivity, in most cases, 3 separate fiber networks to transmit data in and out, a cold climate, and near an airport and a labor force. Alaska has all that. Why not Alaska? In fact, why not maybe in Prudhoe Bay? The power needed for data centers is enormous, and it's well more than solar panels and wind turbines can provide. Here is excess gas that is flared off at Prudhoe Bay, and is a very significant power source and completely available for a data center. And the farther you go south, the seismic episodes become a factor. And that's one of the reasons why Fairbanks and, well, if we can get gas or a good power supply, but Prudhoe Bay. So I found this article as I was doing research this, and I just thought this was kind of a fun fact. In September of 2024, the article came out. Do you guys remember 3 Mile Island, the mothball nuclear power plant near Middleton, Pennsylvania? It's going to reopen in 2028 after a $1.6 billion investment to power Microsoft's data centers. So Microsoft is the only buyer of energy, and it has pledged for Constellation Energy to invest the $1.6 billion, because Microsoft's, its cloud computing and its artificial intelligence programs needs that much power. A nuclear power plant all for itself. I thought that was fascinating. So, final slide. Alaska is the geopolitical and climate change, quote unquote, winner. We are the only state to border the Northwest Passage shipping routes, making us front and center in the middle of the transportation corridor. Nome will be a critical corridor in a choke point in the Bering Sea. Fiber optic cable laying on the seabed is also the communication corridor. Mining, the importance to diversify the source of critical minerals. They're called critical for a reason. Every electronic and battery system made today uses those critical minerals. And that's why Greenland is so important. And that's Greenland and Alaska are similar. We can trade workforces, technology, and materials. And I think natural gas, we have trillions of cubic feet of natural gas, which will be critical, in my opinion, in powering data centers or potentially shipping to Europe. So lots of opportunities.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll hear from Sarah next.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Okay. I don't believe I've ever had to go up against a better act afterwards, but I'd like to start off by saying it was really wonderful to see former Senator von Imhof and Senator Bishop, if you're still in the room. I'm happy you're there, and you both are very meshed in the Capitol. So yeah, my name is Sarah Snowberger, formerly Evans. That's how most people know me, but I am originally from Dillingham, which is in the Bristol Bay region of Alaska. We have about 2,500 people there year round, but our population triples in the summer because of all the commercial fishing opportunities. We have the largest wild salmon run in the whole nation. In fact, we supply over 50% of the world's wild salmon just out of my community alone. So it was a great place to grow up, and I'm very proud to be there. And I now live in Juneau. Like they said in my bio, I've been here since 2020. I kind of got locked down here during COVID, and I love it, and I've stayed ever since. And it's a lot easier being a staffer when you don't have to travel back and forth to the Capitol. So the first question I was sort of asked to present on tonight was what got me interested in politics. And I guess to start, I have always sort of been a political junkie ever since I was a kid. I just always really found it interesting. And as I got older, I would just get more and more would participate in like local elections. And my mom actually worked really closely with the now Speaker of the House, Bryce Edgmond. And so I've known Bryce since I was a little kid. And when he started to run, I thought it was really cool and fun to help him to run for office down in the legislature, and got some start there. But in the early 2000s, I ended up moving out of Alaska and going to school down in Washington. And around 2008, I'd say, is when the Pebble mine started to really pick up traction back home. And if you don't know what the Pebble mine is, it's a proposed mine still at the headwaters of the Bristol Bay. It would be a primarily gold and copper mine. And if it were to be built, it would be the largest mine in North America. It is still, we're still fighting over that mine. And when I was down in school, a close group close-knit group of my friends got together. All of us grew up in Dillingham, and we were like, you know what, if we don't move home and start doing something quickly, this mine's going to be built, and our community's not going to exist anymore. So a lot of us moved home, and we started figuring out how we could fight this mine to protect our little community and the surrounding communities. And I started working on a lot of initiatives to fight the Pebble mine. I could talk about that all day long, but I won't. But anyways, that's what brought me back home to my home community. And I started attending in Dillingham. They have a UAF Bristol Bay campus, and I started continuing my education there. Eventually, I started working as an anthropologist for the Department of Fish and Game in the subsistence division. And I got to travel all over the state of Alaska doing that job. I would study people's harvesting patterns all around Alaska, just seeing like what they harvested, where they harvested it from, did a lot of mapping of where they harvested everything from. So that was really cool. I got to go like above the Arctic Circle, all the way down to the Aleutian chain. And I did that for about 8 years. And then as I was taking classes at UAF, there was a former state representative, Mike Davis, who was a legislator out of Fairbanks, but had moved to Dillingham and was a commercial fisherman. And we'd been friends for a long time, just doing politics in Dillingham. And he was like, hey, I teach this really cool class where we go down to Juneau and you get to meet with other legislators. I'm sure the senators in the room know the class I'm talking about. So I took that class with Mike and I got to meet a lot of legislators and talk about issues that were close to my community. And I got to just have this really unique, almost like one-on-one experience with all types of legislators. It was right before the next, a few years before a governor was, well, back then it was Byron Malott running for governor, and who ended up teaming up with Bill Walker, and he ran for lieutenant governor, and they eventually won that election. But so anyways, after the after the Mike Davis class, I found out that UAF, or the UA system, provided a, back then it was just called the internship program. Now it's known as the Ted Stevens internship program, which is Professor Glenn Wright is the professor for the internship program. And that's how I met him. And I became an intern for Senator Bill Wielechowski. And it was a really great experience. That guy worked me to the bone, but it crafted me into I guess a decent enough staffer that then I was hired by the late Senator Johnny Ellis, and I worked in his office until he retired after being a legislator for over 30 years. And through his office, I learned so much. I got to work on some fantastic legislation. I passed my first bill, which was to make it legal for Narcan to be sold over the counter, or for doctors to prescribe it to not just addicts, but their family members, and for EMTs and police officers to be able to carry Narcan. And it was a really great opportunity and an honor to carry that legislation. And then since then, I've gone on to work in the House for a couple different legislators. And this is my third session with Representative Maxine Dibert. So that is sort of my history into the building. And I've got to work with some really incredible people along the way. And I've made a ton of mistakes, but I've learned from them and found out things that I care about and things that I'm passionate about. And I think Professor Glenn really wanted me to come speak to you about the other perspective of not being a legislator, but the staff and the work that we do and the different styles of how we work in the Capitol. He did ask me what, like Senator von Imhof, I was asked what my leadership style was. And I was speaking to my boss tonight and I said, what do you think my leadership style is? And she said, well, I know 3 things about you, Sarah. You're very blunt, you're quick paced, and you're very passionate. I don't know if that's a leadership style, but I had to agree with her. But I like to think that my style is more democratic. And I think that you have to be a democratic leader when you are a staffer, because you're not the leader of your office, your bosses, but us as staff, we do a lot of the behind the scenes work, and we have to take in everybody's feedback for how to improve things in the building. And And so, but, you know, I guess another reason why I was asked to speak tonight is because I guess in the world of staffing, especially in this legislature, I am a leader in this field, which is crazy to say, but staffing's it's a hard profession, and people leave it pretty quickly. But there's a lot of us that stick around because we do love the job, and we love working with a lot of great people in this building. That includes a lot of the legislators. But there's a lot of turnover. There's turnover with legislators, there's turnover with staff. And so as a leader in my field, what are the challenges we're trying to address right now? Well, my current boss is the co-chair of House Resources, which besides finance is probably the next like biggest committee that you can take on, because Alaska is such a resource development state. And we value our other resources, like our clean air, our clean water, our clean land, and our multiple cultures throughout the state of Alaska. And my boss also sits on the Tribal Affairs Committee. She, in the Tribal Affairs Committee, she's the sole chair. So we do a lot of work in there too. Sorry, I'm getting somebody came in the room. I get a little distracted for a moment. I apologize, but so, you know, what I try to do in my field is, my boss hired me for a reason. She hired me because I have really great relationships in the building that I've grown over time, and that I know how to succeed, and I know how to help her get to the next level. And I think that's why she's kept me on. And I'm also her committee aide for both those committees. And so what I try to do, well, I'll step back for just a second. I kind of told you my background about how I worked for some senators and representatives, and these are all people who had over 10 years of being a legislator in this building. And now I have this unique experience with working with someone who's a legislator that's brand new to the building. And last session was her first session, and she was the only Alaska Native female in the building. And now we're fortunate enough that we have 3 Alaska Native women in the legislature, which is really exciting. And for the first time ever, we have more females than males in the House of Representatives. And also the Tribal Affairs Committee is an all-female committee, which I'm pretty sure is the first of its kind, the first all-women female crew. And so, you know, that's part of what we're trying to change too. We're trying to have more diversity in the legislature. We want more, not just women, but Alaska Natives and other people of other ethnicities. We have Representative Mina, who's a Filipino, and so we're, you know, it's getting a more and more diverse group, and it's really incredible to watch. And then the other thing that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create like a better learning environment for other staff. When I started out as a staffer, it was pretty cutthroat in the building. There wasn't a lot of training how to be a staffer, especially how to be a good staffer. It was just kind of like you're pushed into the job and learn it quick and move fast and do what your bosses need you to do. But me, and not just me, but some other long-term staffers are really trying to create an environment where we want to share everything. How did we learn this? Let me show you the tools. Let's talk about doing some working groups together. Let's talk about doing some staff training together, so that no matter what you go on to do, for the meantime, you are as important to this caucus and want to succeed with this caucus and bring as much as you can to help your boss succeed, to help the caucus succeed, help yourself succeed in getting the goals done that you would like to. And I guess, yeah, another thing I think I was asked to not necessarily speak on, but a topic we wanted to touch on was what is it like to be a staff versus a legislator? you know, well, first of all, it's a lot nicer because you don't have to be in front of a camera and the papers aren't quoting what you're saying. But it does come with a big set of different responsibilities. For example, there's a capital crowd going around the building, and there's a lot of legislators that have been out, and that included my boss, unfortunately, but she's on the mend. But you know, just because she wasn't there to chair the meeting, I still had to make sure that the meeting went on. And so it was up to me as the committee aide to get somebody else to chair the meeting, but I still had to write the script. I still had to organize every single presenter in that committee, make sure that they were ready in the room, ready to present, that their PowerPoint was out, that it was to the other committee members, that all the committee members had a chance to review the documents before the committee. And so I guess the point of that is, honestly, sometimes you don't need the legislator in the room, but you can't do it without your chief of staff to make sure the meeting goes on. And there were some fellow staffers who were laughing because they were like, yeah, you know, if your boss gets sick, okay, but damned if the chief of staff gets sick, because then what would get done? And that's not to diminish the work that the legislators do. They work day in and day out, and they have to be the face of their district, the face for their constituents, the face for the legislation. And if it fails, it falls on them and not us. So I think that's all I have right now for my opening talk, but I'm really happy to answer questions, and it's really great opportunity to speak in front of you today. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So both Senator von Imhof and Ms. Snowberger are willing to take questions from you all. I will note that Senator von Imhof does need to leave at 6:45. So maybe for anyone who has questions specifically for her, we could have those because she's got a half hour or so with us.
So the first one comes from Gretchen. Thank you both for such great presentations. Natasha highlighted a number of economic opportunities for Alaska. Many will take significant investment in public and private coordination to pursue. Based on your experiences in Juneau and beyond, do you think we will be able to position ourselves to capitalize on them? In general, what needs to happen in order to be ready?
So everything costs money. And the question is who's going to pay for these huge investments? The first thing, let's talk about icebreakers. And so I'm just going to use that as an example. Icebreakers, the United States has 12, my understanding, and I think all but 3 are in the Great Lakes. Only 3 actually have the capability of going to the Arctic and Antarctic, and 2 of the 3 were built in the 60s, and they're ending their shelf life. China, on the other hand, has like 7 or 8, and I think Russia has like 30. So one of the things that I think the United States federal government, defense, Coast Guard should decide whether they want to start investing money in Alaska, at least for defense. And the reason why I say that is we sort of piggyback, that's sort of the pot of money partially for the Nome port. So I think there's going to be a need for the federal government to recognize Alaska's strategic importance in its defense, as well as communication, as well as in transportation. I hope to see some federal money. In regards to the state, I've always stated that the state should put some money in, and we have an organization called ADA, Alaska Industrial Export Authority, and it puts too much money in, like 90% of the project. When you do a 50-state comparison, most states looking at public-private partnership only put in about 30, tops 40. Then you have private investment, and then maybe other public entities. And we all do this big conglomerate mashup. And that's because you use the best minds. Public officials have a different agenda than private companies. It's best when both can be married up for the same purpose. One last example. I'm not even going to touch, I know one of the lead into this is potentially if we can resolve the permanent fund dividend payout into something that's affordable for our children and grandchildren, there is money left on the table for investments in infrastructure. The last comment I will make is I like to see things piggyback. You use two reasons and you slam them into one sandwich. If we were ever going to build a gas line from Prudhoe Bay to Anchorage, it's just too expensive. But if we have a data center up in Prudhoe Bay and they want to put X, Twitter, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, whomever, and they want to put a cable line from Prudhoe Bay to Anchorage to bypass that ice scour, then maybe we can piggyback it on a gas line and we've killed two birds with one stone. So you have federal money, you've got private money, and I think the state should put in some money. And then we build ourselves a fiber optic gas line kind of thing. That's what I like to see.
Another question from online for Natasha. This is from Bernice. You mentioned that someone stated that by 2050, there will be significant traffic in the Bering and Chukchi Seas. As someone from Barrow, Alaska, where coastal communities will be directly impacted by these shipping routes, what key areas of research are still needed to help us prepare for these changes? Additionally, given Alaska's complex governance arrangements, how important is collaborations within the state? And in your eyes, is that collaboration happening effectively?
I think that Bernice would probably be better equipped to answer that kind of collaboration since she's from that area, but you're absolutely right. And I think a good source of funds that's going to be coming available is the NPRA funds. So as Willow gets online, the royalties go half to the federal government and half to the Native communities in that area. And I'd like to see some of those funds to be spent on those very things that Bernice just said, is looking at sea ice, looking at whale migration, looking at other terrestrial mammal migration, looking at wind, looking at storms, all the different weathers. And I think that the folks in that area should absolutely be involved with that. And so to the degree that the folks in Utqiagvik and in the surrounding communities, and I can't name them off the top of my head right now, but to the degree that folks can collaborate with Ilisavik College, with the UAF and so forth, and get a hold of some of that NPRA money and look at the research available and then share it and talk about it with the other countries, with the Greenland, with Norway, and with each other, and then come up with the way that makes sense for both the community and for transportation and communication and mining.
Hi, Senator von Imhof. So, the entire region of the North American Arctic that you've been describing is, before it is Canada, before it is America, before it's Denmark, is Inuit Nunat. And these are lands that have been stewarded for hundreds, if not thousands of generations. The way that this kind of economic approach that is being taken at a pan-Arctic level, seeing the Arctic as this new opportunity, this blank space for kind of new investments and new ways of extracting capital and resources from it, it denies the very kind of essence of what has made the Arctic a special place for so long, which is that the land and the waters are themselves they're relatives. They are important to maintain, and thinking of it exclusively in terms of resources and the extractive capacity. I mean, the way that Donald Trump has spoken about Greenland ignores the entirety of the colonial history underlying that country and the fact that the people there are self-determining and it's not for sale. So I guess I'm curious, there is a question at the end of this. But, framing all of this in terms of kind of limitless growth, that this is a new opportunity for America, whose kind of, global status is severely compromised at this point, to continue asserting its relevance, its hegemony over the rest of the world, while other countries are vilified for, committing similar atrocities. I wonder what limitless growth on a finite world kind of like, what does that phrase conjure? And, you know, what are the ways that this, you know, more or less unfettered approach to economic development and seeing the Arctic as just another space to capitalize on in the great game between global powers. Yeah, how can we maybe take a different tack in that direction, you know, away from that direction?
So I appreciate that. And that is a concern. I think that when we're starting to look at opening new land, new sea transportation, what does it mean for the marine life? What does it mean for the culture? What does it mean for the whale hunters of the area? So as I said at the very beginning, I'm a pragmatist. So I look and see what's the vision, and then we back into what's possible. Everything that I talked about tonight is going to cost a ton of money. There's not that much money. I mean, there's money, but not that much money. Is mining going to happen in Greenland? What's already happening? Is it going to happen to the extent of like every red dot that you saw in Alaska or in Greenland is going to get mined? No, there's not enough people. There's not enough. There's permitting. The list is long. So I guess the question that I ask you is, and this is what it keeps me up at night. How do we find the balance that maybe not everyone is happy with, but people can live with, in that we go forward? Because cell phones, batteries, alternative energy, cell phones are not going away. Quantum computing is not going away. You have to have, at this stage, the critical minerals. Where do we get them? What I did not include in my presentation, I deleted it. I actually had a whole slide and I deleted it, was the atrocities that China does in their mines. You do not see that in Alaska. You do not see that in America. And the atrocity that I'm talking about is just people laying there dead, just in a pool of toxic filth. You don't have that. I'd like to see mining done in a systematic, safe, reasonable way. What does that look like? You got to ask some miners. I'm a finance person. But to your point, I do not support raping and pillaging the earth. I support thoughtful resource development for the betterment of society as a whole, so that we can reach our highest potential for our own individual lives.
Just to provide a response, you know, I think about especially the talk around data centers and the need for increasing energy for these, you know, advanced technologies. Meanwhile, you know, and maybe this is, you know, a bit of a trite point in some ways, but it's like we obviously have an immense wealth gap in the country. We have people who, you know, live hand to mouth, and you know, up on the North Slope, for example, or in Nome, for example, like housing shortages and low qualities of housing, and you know, people are using honey buckets in many of these villages. So the question is, you know, like, if we're going to keep investing all of this money into essentially corporations that are treating us like commodities, you know, these data centers are not for us. They are for Google to be mining more data from us. They are for Facebook to be mining more data for us. And AI is obviously going to put tons of people out of work. And there's, you know, there's like machination of various industries. You know, you think about what a new mine will be. Well, how many jobs will that mine produce? And will those jobs be local jobs? The North Slope doesn't employ, you know, nearly as many local people as they ideally should. So I guess again, you know, I see many holes in this approach to how the Arctic can or should be developed, and especially because these forms of development almost always leave local people and poor people in the dust.
Should I respond, or is this a question, or?
The only question is well, this kind of comes back to the permanent fund, for example. You know, how do you have a redistributive economy, one that actually ensures that everybody who has, you know, a stake in whatever resource it is, that they are getting their fair share of the cut? How do you ensure that that takes place? What kind of agreements, what kind of laws or policies need to be put in place ahead of time to make sure that development is in fact sustainable and equitable?
So that was a lot. And I think, to me, data centers, actually more so connectivity, whether it be Starlink or whether it be fiber optic cable. One of the things that I have found is trying to make a logo for a company. I used to have to spend thousands of dollars, and now I just put it out on like a group think. And a young man from Kotzebue was on his little internet, has his little company, came up with a logo. I was like, I like that one. Paid him whatever the money I paid him. Now I have a logo from a guy from Kotzebue. Never even met him, never even talked to him. You have an internet cable, you got a brain, hopefully you've got access to a computer. Welcome, you're in business. $25 bank, what is it called to get a business license? Permanent fund. Wealth distribution is already there. You don't have to earn a permanent fund, meaning you don't have to be of a certain social economic. The permanent fund is available to anybody that's lived in Alaska for over a year. The royalties that are deposited in the permanent fund are oil. Should there be mining? Should there be fishing? Should there be timber? I'm open for discussion. All royalties. Right now it's mining, and it's distributed to everybody equally every year. And that's not going to change. I don't think that's going to change. So that's what we have situated now. I see a gentleman in the back in a red shirt. Does Sarah want to answer?
Yes, thanks Natasha and Sarah. I'm Phil. I grew up I'm a lifelong resident of Nome in the Seward Peninsula. I was born in Wells, where I actually saw Russia in my front yard. And I've lived here in Fairbanks for the last 30 years. But Natasha, and I'd like to have Sarah respond to this also. Natasha, at the beginning of your talk, you mentioned that these things are what make you an effective leader. But then you went on and you spoke on mainly activities, whether they're climate change, whether they're economics, etc. And I was looking forward to you expounding on what these things might be that makes one an effective leader. What are the qualities? Now, with the understanding that the population dynamics is such in Alaska that 80% of the population in our state reside on 20% of the land, i.e. the road system, and 20% of the population reside on 80% of the state where the majority of minerals and oil reside. With that in mind, can you expound on what might make you an effective leader for all of Alaska? And I would like Sarah to respond to that also. Thank you.
So a couple questions, or a couple comments. I've been thinking about that, and thank you for that question. It's excellent. There are 4 things that I believe are available to every human being on this earth. And if you embody those 4 things, you are leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else. And those 4 things are, number 1, a strong work ethic. Get up early, pay attention, do the homework. Number 2, a calm mind. Do not let your emotions overtake you. Stay calm. Number 3, a loving household. You encourage, support, and love and harmony at home. And number 4, a fit body. You cannot think if your digestive system is going haywire. Been there. Strong work ethic, calm mind, loving household, fit body. Those 4 things make anybody a potential. Their potential is endless. To me, that's the crux of an effective leader. Second part of that question is there is no way that any one of us can ever live our lives in your shoes. Each one of us lives our own lives with our own journey, our own challenges, our own joys. Any effective leader should surround him or herself with people of a variety of backgrounds, a variety of perspectives, a variety of just viewpoints. Not yes people, but no people. NO. Have everybody on your cabinet that will give you the real answer. And a good leader listens, hears what they're saying, and to the degree they can, incorporate as many viewpoints as they can into the final product, the final solution. To me, sir, that's what makes a good leader.
Let's hear from Sarah before the next question. Sarah, do you want to respond to that?
Sure. I really like what former Senator von Imhof had to say. Those are really good points. But when you were asking the question, I guess what came to mind is, well, today in the Capitol, I saw my very good friend and mentor, Rick Halford, who was a legislator for over 25 years here in Alaska. He was also the Senate president and the majority leader. And what Rick had the ability to do that I think made him such a good leader, and he has taught me to be a better leader through it, was he realized that it's okay to change your mind about issues and about topics. You know, he talks about how he's always been pro mining and he always will be pro mining, and just because I'm against the pebble mine doesn't mean that I'm not for other mines too. They have a necessary place in the world right now. And but what all the years I've got to know Rick is mainly through fighting the pebble mine, because Rick said, you know, this is the headwaters of the Bristol Bay, the last good wild salmon runs in the world, and we have to protect it at all costs. So not this place, not this mine, not here, no matter how much money was into it, because salmon are our lifeblood. You know, people out in my country, especially us indigenous people, we call it red gold for a reason, because it's the most valuable thing that we have out there. And like Senator von Imhof was saying, it's different experiences that shape who you are. I believe that's what she was getting to. And but you know, when you become a good leader, you have to be able to change over time. You have to be able to take other people's lived experiences. And I think that's a really, really important part of being a good staffer and even a good legislator, is that people travel all the way down here to Juneau day in and day out to teach you things or give public testimony. And maybe they have 1 minute, maybe they have 2 hours to give you that, but they practice it all and they work really hard to give you that information. And what you can do best is turn on your listening ears and shut your mouth and just learn from these people and let it expand your mind and let it help you grow and be able to change your mind when it's important. So that's all I have.
Hi, I'm Shahina Shahid. I have a question for both of you. For Sara, I would like to know, you know, theoretically, 1 out of 5 people in Alaska are Alaska Native. So what do you think is some of the barriers for having more representation for Indigenous people in the government, in positions of power? And then for Natasha, we see that Greenland, if it were to melt, the amount of ice in Greenland, if it were to melt, it would rise the sea levels by 20 feet. And of course, in Congo, we see the civil war, we see the cobalt, and the US directly benefits from the destruction of that nation. What kind of global instability do you foresee for Alaska when it's already under the US control? Greenland is something that's far away for now, right? And we don't control it yet, but we're right here now. So that's my 2 questions. Thank you.
I'll
Sarah?
let the senator, former senator go first, since I know she has a time constraint, so please.
Okay, I will need to get back to you on Congo. I don't know enough about the mines there and how that affects the United States and how the United States is benefiting from Congo. I apologize. I don't know enough. Sea ice melting, yeah, it's an issue. I'd have to talk to people about what that means. I don't know. I think that we're seeing, when I visited communities along the Yukon River, they're already dealing with erosion there, and communities are needing to move into higher ground. I mean, that's like the pragmatic and near-term solution. I don't think it's gonna be like next year. I think it's gonna be several decades from now. I would like to think that we'd have time to plan. I'm hoping that we will be switching to maybe more green energy, where we can slow down some of these the melting of the ice. Perhaps we might moving in that direction. I don't know. That's all I got, Sarah.
Sorry, I was having a problem with the mute button. Yeah, I believe your main question was, what are the hardships of Alaska Native people getting jobs, or not just jobs, but getting elected into leadership positions in the legislature? And well, I mean, first of all, I'd like to say that that population is growing. I mean, to go from 1 Alaska Native female to 3 in a year, that's incredible. That shows change. That shows that Alaskans are trusting the Alaska Native people to be in these seats of power and to represent them and their constituents. But why is it hard? Well, I think one of the major ones is that if you spend time with Alaska Native people, they really are not, they're not braggy people. They don't want to, and I'm not saying other legislators are, but to run for office, you have to have a lot of faith in yourself, and you also have to expel that to the public, that they can trust you to get the job done. You have to be a little bit bragful and boastful, like this is what I can do for you. This is what I can do for our community. And it takes a lot of uplifting from the community around them. For example, my boss, she was a 20+ year 3rd grade teacher, and she did not want to run for office, really. It wasn't, the politics was not really up her alley. It was teaching these young children. And she said that her friends literally had to drag her down to go register to run for office. And so I think it takes a lot. It takes literally a village to get behind you, to put you into the seat and to trust you, and to help build that confidence and the confidence of all your constituents to get out and vote for you. So it takes change in all of us, not just the people that want to run. The question was, as a staffer, I'm sure you often see potential in leaders who would be great staffers or great representatives. How do you determine the difference between the 2 types of leadership potentials, if you do at all? Is there a difference in leadership style expectations that you have as a staffer for a representative, or are they more or less the same? So my answer to that, first of all, would be, if I could magically make a law that said that every single legislator who wanted to run for office had to be a staffer for at least 1 session first, I would do that. Because it's a totally different world of what happens in the building. And that you learn a lot more. And there are a lot of legislators who are staffers first, like the vast majority, even down to my former boss, Senator Johnny Ellis. He was a legislator for over 30 years, like I said, but he started out as a staffer. He staffed for a couple years, and that's pretty common. Bryce Edgman, current speaker, he was a staffer for many years before he became a legislator. And I'm not saying that I've seen fantastic legislators do it right out of the gate. They don't need to do any staffing, but I feel like it helps you manage your office a lot better. It helps you know what you need your staff to do and explain it to them in the right way so that you become the most productive version of your office that you can be. And so, but you can recognize it in staff. I see staff and I ask, like, I ask staff all the time, like, when are you going to run for office? And I've been asked that a million times myself. And my answer is I just don't want to be on camera having to answer these things. And I don't want the weight of like having to help all these constituents, and the stress of running for office. But I like the background of it all. And I think that's really what determines if you should stay a staff or go on to be a legislator, or what makes people legislators is like, are you willing to be the face of your district, of your constituents, of your district? Are you willing to be on camera all that time and in front of the press? Or, do you want to be like me, who continues to remain a staffer in the background, where you get to do a deep dive on all the different political stuff, ideas that you have, and you get to have these connections with the constituents one-on-one and solve their issues one-on-one. It's a really good feeling. But when you're a legislator, you don't have time to like have those individual conversations as much as anymore, because you're literally going from committee to committee to committee. So, and if you're not in committee, you're taking these little brief 15-minute meetings in your office all day long. If it's lobbyist, if it's, Food Bank of Alaska or charter schools, and you have to be able to switch on a dime to talk to these people on the different levels, or be able to do, like I said, a good part is listening. So listening to that and taking it all in. And so I hope that answers your question, but I really do feel like a lot of the best legislators were staffers first and learned that role before moving into the bigger one.